In 2021, more than 100,000 Americans got their own trucking authority. Freight rates were at record highs, and every load board in the country was glowing with freight that needed to move. Drivers who had spent 20 years making money for somebody else finally bought their own trucks. 2 years later, trucking companies were shutting down at the fastest pace ever recorded. Even Yellow, a carrier that survived the Great Depression, closed after 99 years and put 30,000 people out of work. So what actually happens between signing for that first truck and handing back the keys? The real numbers, the real problems, and why some owners still wouldn't trade it for anything. Let's start with what it costs just to legally turn a wheel. From the driver's seat, the math looks simple. You haul a load that pays $3,000, and you think, if this truck was mine, that check would be mine too. And technically, that's true. What you don't see from the driver's seat is everything standing between you and that check. First comes the authority. To run your own freight, you need an operating authority from the federal government, a motor carrier number, and a pile of registrations that come with it. The filing itself is cheap, a few $100s. That's the last cheap thing you'll ever buy in this business. Because right behind the paperwork comes insurance, and insurance is where the dream meets reality. A brand new trucking company with no track record is the riskiest thing an insurance company can write. So they price it that way. A new authority can expect to pay somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000 per truck, per year, just for liability and cargo coverage. Some owners in bad states or with any blemish on their record pay even more. And that bill doesn't care whether your truck moved this month or sat in the yard. It's due either way. Part of why that bill keeps climbing has nothing to do with you. Over the past decade, jury verdicts against trucking companies have exploded. Crashes that once settled for $1 million now come back from juries at 10, 20, sometimes 90 million, and the industry has a name for them: nuclear verdicts. Insurance companies pass that risk straight down the line. So the small carrier with 2 clean trucks ends up paying for every fleet that ever lost in a courtroom. Some insurers have walked away from trucking entirely, which leaves fewer companies writing policies and every one of them charging more. Then stack on the rest. Apportion plates so you can cross state lines. A fuel tax account because every state wants its share of the diesel you burn on its highways. Enrollment in a drug and alcohol testing consortium. An electronic logging device wired into the dash, required by federal law. A registered agent in every state you operate in. Before your truck has hauled a single pallet, you've spent $20,000 to $40,000. And that's if you already own the truck. Which brings us to the truck itself, because this is where the 2021 gold rush turned cruel. During the boom, used trucks did something they had never done in the history of the industry. They went up in value, and fast. A used Freightliner with 500,000 miles on the odometer, a truck that would have sold for $40,000 in 2019, was suddenly going for 80, 90, sometimes over 100,000. New trucks were back-ordered for a year or more, and thousands of first-time owners signed loans at those prices because the freight rates at the time made the payments look easy. Then rates fell, and the truck values fell with them. Owners found themselves making $1,800 monthly payments on a truck now worth half the loan balance. In the industry, they call that being underwater. And in 2023, the repo lots filled up with trucks from owners who couldn't climb out. And for drivers who couldn't get financing at all, there was another door, and it usually led somewhere worse: the lease purchase deal. A big carrier hands you a truck, no money down, and deducts the payment, the insurance, and the maintenance straight out of your settlement every week. On paper, you're an owner-operator. In practice, you're paying for a truck you don't control, hauling only that carrier's freight at rates that carrier sets. Some weeks after the deductions, the settlement statement actually reads negative. A federal task force spent 2 years studying these deals and found that the vast majority never end in ownership. The truck goes back, the money is gone, and the carrier leases that same truck to the next hopeful driver in orientation. And even when the truck is paid for, it never stops costing money. A heavy tow on the interstate starts around $1,000 before the shop even looks at it. A problem in the emission system, the diesel particulate filter or the sensors around it, can run $5,000 to $10,000. And if the engine itself lets go, an in-frame overhaul on a modern diesel runs $20,000 to $30,000. One bad week in the shop can erase 3 good months on the road. Every experienced owner will tell you the same thing. You don't budget in case the truck breaks. You budget for when. So now you're legal, insured, and rolling. Where does the freight actually come from? For most small carriers, the answer is load boards and freight brokers. The load board is essentially a marketplace. Thousands of loads posted across the country, each one with an origin, a destination, and a rate. It looks like freedom. Pick your load, pick your lane, name your life. The catch is that almost every load on that board is posted by a broker, and the broker is a middleman. A shipper pays the broker to move the freight. The broker keeps a slice, and you get what's left. That slice commonly runs 15% to 20%, and on ugly freight, it can be a lot more. The shipper might be paying $3 a mile while the carrier hauling it sees $2, and that's when the broker is honest. The last few years have brought a wave of outright freight fraud. In the most common version, called double brokering, a scammer poses as a carrier, books the load, then quietly reposts it on the load board for somebody else to haul. The real trucker delivers the freight, the scammer collects the payment and vanishes. Industry groups put the losses north of $500 million a year, and it's usually the smallest carriers, the ones who can least afford it, who end up hauling those loads for free. There's a second catch, and it's the one that broke the industry in 2022. Load board freight is spot market freight, priced day to day by supply and demand. During the boom, spot rates touched $3 a mile, and owners felt like geniuses. Then the country stopped buying like it did during the pandemic. Freight volumes fell, and all those 100,000 new trucks were still out there competing for the loads that remained. Spot rates collapsed to around $1.50, sometimes lower. Same truck, same driver, same miles, half the revenue. And remember, not every mile pays. When you deliver in a town with no outbound freight, you drive empty to wherever the next load is. Those are deadhead miles, and they burn the same diesel and wear the same tires as loaded ones. A carrier running 10 or 15% of its miles empty is doing well. Plenty run worse. Now let's do the math that decides everything: the cost per mile. The American Transportation Research Institute tracks this every year, and their recent numbers put the average cost of operating a truck at roughly $2.20 per mile. Here's where it goes. Fuel is the biggest line, often 50 to 60 cents a mile depending on diesel prices. The truck and trailer payment can be another 40 to 50 cents. Insurance, 15 to 20. Maintenance and tires, another 20 to 25, and that's the average that includes the years nothing breaks. Then tolls, permits, parking, software, and the driver's pay, whether that driver is an employee or you paying yourself. Hold that number in your head, around $2.20 to move a truck 1 mile. Now look back at a spot market paying $1.50 or $1.60. Every single mile, the owner is losing money, and diesel doesn't take I owe us. That's the position tens of thousands of carriers found themselves in through 2023, running hard all week and going backward. Some parked their trucks. Others kept hauling cheap freight just to make the truck payment, which only kept rates low for everyone. In trucking, they have a saying for it: you can't make it up on volume. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. I break down what's really happening inside American industries every week, with the actual numbers. Now for the part that catches even the owners who did their math right. Cash flow. In trucking, you get paid last. You buy the fuel today, $1,600 to fill both tanks. You pay the driver this week, you pay the insurance this month. But the broker who owes you for that load, the standard is net 30. Some pay in 45 days, a few stretch to 60, and every year some brokers simply go under owing carriers money they'll never see. So a company can be profitable on paper and still die because the money coming in arrives 60 days after the money going out. The industry's answer is factoring. A factoring company buys your invoice, pays you within a day or two, and keeps 2 to 4% for the privilege. On thin margins, that fee is real money, but for a small carrier, it's often the only way to keep diesel in the tank. Owners learn quickly that the load board rate was never the real number. The real number is what's left after the broker's cut, the factoring fee, the fuel, and the 60 days of waiting. There's one more bill hiding in that first good year, and it arrives from the IRS. A company driver has taxes taken out of every paycheck and never thinks about them. An owner-operator gets the gross, and the government expects its cut in quarterly estimated payments, self-employment tax included. Plenty of first-year owners spend what's in the account because the account is where the money is, and then meet a $15,000 or $20,000 tax bill the following April with nothing set aside. Ask around any truck stop and you'll find somebody still on a payment plan with the IRS from their first year under their own authority. Survive all of that with one truck, and the natural thought is growth. If one truck nets some profit, 10 trucks should net 10 times that. This is where trucking plays its cruelest trick, because the second truck is usually harder than the first. With one truck, you were the driver. You took care of the equipment because it was yours. You didn't call in sick, you didn't quit at a truck stop in Nebraska, and you didn't idle the engine all weekend burning fuel. The moment you hire a driver, all of that changes. You are now handing a stranger $150,000 worth of equipment and sending it 3,000 miles away, and everything that driver does out there, every hard break, every late delivery, every logbook violation, lands on your safety record and your insurance bill. And finding good drivers is its own war. The big truckload carriers have run annual driver turnover near 90% for years. The average large carrier replaces nearly its entire driver workforce every single year. Small companies can do better by treating people right, and the good ones do. But a driver who quits mid-route doesn't just cost you a load. The truck sits, the payment doesn't, and the insurance doesn't either. Ask owners who've built up to 5 or 10 trucks, and the answer rarely changes. The stretch between 2 and 5 trucks, where you're too big to do everything yourself and too small to afford real help, is where the business almost killed them. Then there's the part of ownership nobody makes videos about because it's paperwork, but it fills more of an owner's day than trucks do. Federal hours of service rules cap a driver at 11 hours of driving inside a 14-hour window, tracked to the minute by that electronic logging device the government required back in 2017. Blow past it, and the violation goes on your carrier record. And that 14-hour clock never stops, which is why the dirtiest secret in freight is detention time. A driver shows up at a warehouse for a 9 o'clock appointment and sits at the dock until 1 in the afternoon, waiting on a forklift. 4 hours gone, and most shippers pay nothing for the first 2. The clock kept running the whole time, so the miles that driver can legally run today just shrank, and the revenue shrank with them. Owners bill for detention, and brokers fight the invoice line by line. Then the day ends somewhere in Indiana, with every truck stop full, and the driver burns another 45 minutes of that same clock hunting for a legal place to park. None of it shows up on a load board. All of it comes out of the owner's pocket. Every roadside inspection, every ticket, every out-of-service violation feeds a federal safety score. And when that score climbs, 2 things happen. Insurance goes up, and good brokers stop giving you freight. Then come the quarterly fuel tax filings, reconciling every gallon bought against every mile run in every state. The annual heavy vehicle tax, the permit renewals, the random drug tests, the truck's annual inspection, the trailer registrations. A small fleet owner is the dispatcher at 6 in the morning, the accountant at noon, the safety department at 3, and the mechanic's phone call at midnight. The truck driving was the easy part. Owners will tell you they miss it. So step back and look at the whole picture, and the failures start to make sense. The companies that died in the shakeout mostly shared the same story. They started during the boom, paid top dollar for equipment, ran entirely on the spot market with no contract freight and no direct customers, and had maybe 1 month of cash in the bank. When rates fell below cost and stayed there for 2 years, there was nothing to fall back on. It wasn't only the little guys. Convoy, a digital freight startup backed by nearly $1 billion in venture capital, shut down almost overnight in late 2023. And Yellow, 99 years old, one of the biggest names in American freight, closed for good that same summer. When a downturn takes out both the one-truck owner and the century-old giant, that tells you something about the business itself. The barriers to entry are low, so in good times everyone floods in, and in bad times the flood drowns. But here's what makes trucking interesting. Through that same brutal stretch, plenty of small companies never missed a payment. And when you look at how they run, the pattern is consistent. They stayed small on purpose, 1 to 5 trucks, because they figured out that revenue and profit are different things, and a bigger fleet mostly meant bigger headaches. They got off the load boards, at least partly, by knocking on doors and hauling directly for local shippers, a manufacturer, a lumberyard, a food distributor, freight that pays steady rates with no broker in the middle. The classic version looks like this. A 2-truck outfit hauls 5 days a week for a food distributor 40 miles up the road. Same lanes, same docks, same rate every week, drivers home every night. It will never make anyone rich, and it will never make the news. It also never missed a payment through the worst freight recession in a generation, while the trucks chasing $3 loads across the country went back to the bank. Many found a niche, hauling the freight nobody else wants. Oversized loads, hazmat, refrigerated produce, tankers. Freight that needs special equipment or special skill pays better precisely because the load boards can't flood it with new competition. They bought used equipment with cash or big down payments, kept trucks longer, and did their own maintenance where they could. And they knew their cost per mile down to the penny, so they could smell a losing load before they booked it. Because owning trucks is not a driving business. It's a math business, done in a diesel-soaked office at 5 in the morning. And yet, talk to the owners who've lasted 10 or 20 years, and almost none of them want out. They'll complain about brokers, about insurance, about the government, sometimes all 3 in one sentence. Then they'll tell you they answer to nobody, that the trucks in the yard are theirs, paid for, real equity you can touch, that their son runs dispatch now, or their daughter does the books, and the company will carry the family name after they're gone. It's a bet American drivers have been making since 1980, when Washington deregulated the industry and threw the doors open. Before that, the government controlled who could haul what, on which routes, at what rates, and the right to run a lane was so valuable it was bought and sold like real estate. Deregulation wiped that away almost overnight. Thousands of drivers walked out of union fleets, bought used cabovers, and went into business for themselves. And most of the big names in trucking today started exactly that way. 1 truck and 1 stubborn owner. The gold rush of 2021 wasn't new. It was the same American story running on newer tires. There are still a lot of businesses in America where a person with a strong back and a sharper pencil can start with 1 used truck and build something that lasts. Trucking, for all its brutality, is still one of them. So that's what it's actually like. The 100,000 who rushed in during the boom weren't fools, and the ones who lost their trucks mostly weren't lazy. They just learned the expensive way that the driver's seat and the owner's chair are 2 different jobs, and only one of them comes with a paycheck you can count on. The ones still rolling are the ones who counted everything else first. If you want to know why those surviving owners are so hard to replace, watch my video on what's really behind the truck driver shortage. It's on your screen now.